May I have your attention, please? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm son of Yisrayl, Abel, Deacon, Yoshiyah, and I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's now time to start finding your seats for Sabbath service.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is son of Yisrayl, Abel, and I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's a privilege and honor to present to you the sons and daughters of Yisrayl now entering the sanctuary. I now present to you one of the sons of Yisrayl, Yoshiyah.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of my speech is Our Labor of Love. Pastor has taught us many times that we need to get involved in the work. So the first step is learning to serve on the Sabbath day. Coming together for Yahweh's Sabbath day, we learn how to serve others by doing our assigned duties. Remember, the work of Yahweh is not only physically serving others by being at our assigned duties, but it's going to the classes where we learn how to serve in this great work. In the 10th book of Yisrayl, Part 1, Chapter 2, verse 53, Pastor is talking about this house. He says, "This is what the Garden of Yahweh was. It was reality. It was a place of communication, of love, of treating everyone like yourself. A place of service, where you learn to serve each other and communicate, and study into things that would really bring joy and gladness to everyone, and abundant living to everyone." So if we take this to heart, we begin learning to serve on the Sabbath day. And from there we ask, how can I help in Yahweh's work more? I want to get involved more. Turn to Titus 3, verse 14. Titus 3:14. On page 941. Titus 3:14. "And let our own people also learn to apply themselves to righteous works, to meet urgent needs, so that they may not become unfruitful." Here's the tree that was unfruitful. This is what occurs if we cut ourselves off from the only established work in these last days. We won't produce any fruit. To become fruitful, we need to do what it says in 2 Kepha 1, 5 through 8. 2 Kepha 1, 5 through 8. On page 961. Verse 5. "And also for this very reason, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue." And if you look at the side note 1b, it says that virtue is moral excellence. And the moral excellence book is the book we're going over in the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program certification class. "And to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance perseverance, and to perseverance holiness, and to holiness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love. For if these things are in you and abound, they cause you to be neither barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our King, Yeshua Messiah." If we do what it says here, we will be like this. Here's the tree that produced fruit. Yahweh can take an unfruitful person and turn them into a fruitful person. Turn to Philemon. Philemon 1, 10 through 11. It says, I appeal to you for my son, Onesimus, who I have begotten well in my chains, who formerly was useless to you, but now he has become profitable to both you and me. If you continue reading, you'll see that he was part of the prison ministry. And the prison ministry, and he was helping Yoshiyah, and he was helping Shaul in the prison ministry, which was part of the work. Now, the work of Yahweh has many areas. There are animals to take care of, gardens to watch over and tend to. There are building and repair projects that need to be done. Yahweh's grounds need to be maintained. We also have the press room, mailroom, offices, music and video departments, the cannery, the bakery, the cafeteria, mechanic shops, the butter house, cheese house, the slaughterhouse, men's and women's GS, and I could go on and on. If I left out your work area, please know that it's important too. But as you can see, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in Yahweh's house. Turn to Matthew 9:37 on page 736. It says, Then he said to his disciples, The harvest is truly plenteous, but the laborers are few. In the ninth book of Yisrayl, part 2, chapter 19, verse 87, it says, I hope very soon to make the house of Yahweh self-sufficient, where we won't have to go to the stores to buy anything from Baal's world. Praise Yahweh. I feel sure with the skills of the 2 billion people who Yahweh is going to bring, that we will have no problem at all. We have a bit of a problem, as Yoshiyah said. The laborers are few. We have a bit of a problem there, but it's coming along, and we're getting some experience. And as far as I can see, we pretty much have it under control. And this feast, there was very little that was bought from the stores. Yes, we're getting some experience, and it's going to be a blessing. It's going to be a blessing to us and all creation for eternity, only if we find our place in this work and stand firmly in it. In conclusions, Yahweh will not forget your part in this work. Turn to Hebrews 6:10, found on page 946. Hebrews 6:10 says, For Yahweh is not unrighteous. He will not forget your work and labor of love which you have shown towards his name, and that you have ministered to the saints and do minister. So do anything you can to get involved in this great work. And with this, I'd like to turn it over to son of Yisrayl for prayer.
If y'all remain standing, I'd like to turn over to the first speaker, son of Yisrayl, Deacon Yisrayl.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated, and may the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of my sermon today is, The Spirit of this World and the Spirit of Yahweh are opposites. Now we know that this is the protected place, the House of Yahweh, and it's the only place where the truth is taught, the laws of Yahweh. There is no salvation in the world except for here. Remember Matthew 6:33. Let's turn there. Matthew 6. It's found on page 733. in verse 33, and it says, "But seek you first the kingdom of Yahweh and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." So seek first the kingdom. Now let's go over to Matthew 24. Found on page 752, and look at verse 5. And it says, "For many will come against my name, saying, I am anointed to preach salvation, and will deceive many." Go up to verse 11. "And many false prophets will rise, and will deceive the many." And look down to verse 24. It says, "For there will arise false messiahs and false prophets, who will show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect." So there's a lot of falsehood that's being preached and taught in the world today. But here at the House of Yahweh, you're taught the truth, which is the laws of Yahweh. Now our foundation is the prophets and apostles, and in chapter 24 of the 13th book of Israel, part 1, verse 46 through 47, pastor says, Satan won't tell you to keep the Sabbath. And those who pretend to keep the Sabbath, they're not really keeping the Sabbath, because they're not keeping it like Yoshiyah kept the Sabbath. Yoshiyah showed us how to keep the Sabbath. Our foundation is Yoshiyah. He's the chief cornerstone. Our foundation is the prophets, what they wrote, the apostles, what they wrote, and Yoshiyah and his example. He set us the example. He says, do it. Just do it. So he set us a perfect example. He was a perfect servant to the people. And the world hated him because he revealed their sins. And they also hate Yisrayl Hawkins, and they proved it in their own courts that they hate him. Look over to Yochanan, chapter 6, and verse 63. And it says, this is found on page 822, and it says, "It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. Without the laws that I speak to you, they are spirit, and they are life everlasting." So that spirit is the laws of Yahweh. And in the 9th book of Israel, part 1, chapter 12, verse 146, it says, "It is the Spirit that gives life, the Spirit of the laws." It's the Spirit of the laws, the Spirit of Yahweh, which he shows us in his laws and his prophets. It is this Spirit, this character, which gives you life. The flesh is useless. The laws that I speak to you, he says, the laws that I speak to you, they are spirit, and they are life everlasting. They're the prophecies of Yahweh come to life in these last days. So it's the character, and we all should be striving to develop the character of Yahweh so that we can make it into the kingdom. Look over to Matthew chapter 19. And verse 17. And it says, "But he said to him, Why do you question me about righteousness? There is only one who is the standard of perfection, and that is Yahweh. So if you would enter into life, keep the laws of Yahweh." And remember Revelations 22 verses 12 through 14. Now let's turn over to Ephesians chapter 2. It's found on page 917, Ephesians 2. And let's start with verse 19. And it says, "Therefore, now you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of the house of Yahweh, and are built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Yeshua Messiah himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom the whole house, being fitly joined together by Yahweh's unity, grows into the holy house of Yahweh. And in him you are also being built together to become the house of Yahweh through the Spirit." So if you want to be a part of the family of Yahweh, you must come into unity by keeping his laws, the 613 laws. And in the 4th book of Israel, pastor's talking about this, the spirit of the world, and not partaking in it. In the 4th book of Israel, the Reverence Yahweh number 2, verse 48 here, he's reading from Colossians 3:15, and let the peace of Yahweh rule in your hearts. If you don't have this peace, then you have Satan. You see Satan's spirit all over the world right now. Enter into any store and you will see Satan's spirit. Thinking that joy comes from buying or accumulating of riches. The deceitfulness of riches is Satan's way. Brethren, I tell you, don't cling to that way. Don't let it have anything to do in your lives. It is an evil spirit that will drag you away from the kingdom of heaven. Don't have anything to do with these people who have anything to do with this spirit. If you get around them, you're going to get it. Stay away from it, flee from it, stay away from it, and say to them, get the hence. Do whatever you have to do. He says here, verse 50, the people who carry this spirit, you don't want them around you. It's a bad spirit that is easily obtained. If you enter into the stores or go to your kinfolks who celebrate these days, you will get it, I guarantee. You will have the same desires as they have, and all they bring is emptiness into your life. The only true joy that there is comes from Yahweh. So the spirit of the world, it will drag you right out of Yahweh's house. It'll drag you out of the kingdom of heaven, as Pastor said. Stay away from it. There's no true joy in the world, no true peace in the world. It's only offered here at Yahweh's house. My last quote from the Book of Israel, the 10th Book of Israel, Part 2, Chapter 8, verse 11. It says, but when you come here and you don't repent and you bring your sins with you, then those sins will eventually keep growing and outweighing your thoughts of ever wanting to find true peace again. But the true peace is offered here at Yahweh's house. True joy is offered here at His house. It's the only place on earth you can find it. So don't partake of the spirit of the world. Only partake of the tree of life that offers righteousness, teaches the 613 laws. Have the attitude of servitude. And remember what the son of Yisrayl, Yoshiyah, said. There's a lot of work that needs to get done at Yahweh's house. So get involved, put your hand to the plow and don't look back. And with that, if you'll all please stand. It's my great honor and privilege to present to you the great Khan Benjamin Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. Man. Beautiful Sabbath day. And we got some really, really wonderful information on the plate for you. Hope you're ready. Got your pens and paper. Because this book is really going to begin even to come to life even more for you. And you're going to see that Yahweh inspired our great overseer, Yisrayl Hawkins, so astronomically when he wrote this book 40 years ago. So read at least one chapter of that in preparation for Sabbath and the upcoming feast. And by the way, you do have a personal invitation to a feast of Yahweh coming up. They're on the back table. This blog post. It's a 10-page invitation. Have you ever got a 10-page invitation? You also have another assignment to read. Remember, the pastor asked us to read this. Prophecies you'll soon see, then you'll believe. Where's the nuclear baby? Where is the nuclear baby? So I want to pick up where I left off last time about this enterprise, this enterprising religions and system. And do y'all remember what the son of Israel, Abel, asked? Remember what he talked about, Dokimon? Well, number 96, you're going to learn about this, is the opposite. It's adokimos, and it means to fail to pass the test, unapproved, counterfeit. Okay? So this is what we don't want to be found. Okay? A counterfeit. Okay? We don't want to be unapproved. And there is a counterfeit system out there, and it's all around us. In fact, I'm so pleased the great son of Israel, Yoshiyah, and the great son of Israel, Abel, Deacon Yisrayl, Abyl, they practically laid the groundwork for the sermon right now. Okay, so are y'all ready? Now, if you remember where I left off, we were talking about, I showed you these numbers. Captain Kirk, if you remember, his number was 323, or Circe, okay, Circe, Kirk. And then I showed you another number. Lucifer was 323. And then I showed you that Catholicism was 323. All just a coincidence, I'm sure. So then, no sooner had we got through that sermon. Actually, this occurred a day before the sermon took place, and I didn't know it until the 29th of August when it came out in the news. Lightning strike killed 323 reindeer. Okay, did y'all hear about that? In fact, they showed it in the news last week, didn't they? YPN News. And it shows that it occurred on that Friday, which was the 26th. The 323 reindeer were killed by lightning, right? Lightning killed them. Here's the another article. Lightning strike kills 323 wild reindeer in Norway. Okay, Norway. Can we go ahead and play the clip, please? Pay close attention. You'll see some really interesting things that they haven't shown you before. So what did you notice about that? I guess the lightning blew the heads off of those reindeer? Because that was never pointed out in any story that I saw. Okay, but let me tell you, remember Yahweh unlocks all the secrets, doesn't he? Doesn't Yahweh expose Babylon? Isn't he exposing and revealing? As a matter of fact, if you saw the tag on that reindeer, I just gave you a definition of 96, but it also means revelation. Because Yahweh, remember when the book of Revelation was written? 96 AY. Well, let me show you what they didn't tell you in the news. A deadly animal prion disease has appeared in Europe, and this is back in April of this year. It says, how brain disorder related to mad cow disease spread to Norway is a mystery. Norway has their first, Europe. It says, a highly contagious and deadly animal brain disorder has been detected in Europe for the first time. Now, I want you to know that it's chronic wasting disease, and pastors taught us a lot about that in the past, was thought to be restricted to deer and moose. It was in North America and South Korea, but also on the 4th of April, researchers announced that the disease has been discovered in free-ranging reindeer in Norway. This is both the first time that CWD has been found in Europe and the first time that it's been found in this species in the wild anywhere in the world. And it shows you here a picture of a reindeer brain from Norway, and it was found to contain multifolded proteins called prions in its brain. Now, my guess is the reason why those heads were off the reindeer is they have to examine the brains to see, okay, what did they die from? Because a lightning strike sounds a little bit odd, doesn't it? 323 reindeer in one strike. Those deer were all over the place on that plateau there. Now, as a result of this, the European Commission has a prohibition on export of live cervids. Now, in case you don't know, a cervid is a reindeer, deer, moose, elk. Those are called cervids. It's going to have an impact on the industry that export live servants. It's going to have an impact on the people that are selling this, of course. But now it's also going to have an impact on these people. A prohibition on the import, sale, purchase, and use of scents or lures from cervids. Now, if you don't know what that is, I would like to show you. In fact, I went on, because I didn't even know what they were, that they actually use deer urine to attract deer hunters. They use the urine of deer to attract the deer. Now, I went on Google because I didn't know anything about that, and this is the first thing that popped up. This product called Mad Buck. Now look at that deer, you know, the name in itself tells you this is something strange here, isn't it? Here's some of their products. Mad Buck Insanity Powder. Insanity Powder. Now why would you call it? Knowing about mad cow, you know, insanity, crazy, right? Knowing things like that, why would, look at it says, drive them crazy. Drive them crazy. Let's see what else they have. Scented hog jam. Says tailor-made scents to attract hogs with air contact. You know, and they also have things like deer corn deer, scents that drive them crazy. Mad Buck innovations. They have these different aromas, and they have what they call blocks, salt lick blocks, and things that they put in the soil, that they hang in trees for the scent to go. And that's how these things are spreading, by the way, from the deer who are infected with the CWD and the people in Norway buying these things. Now, this company is located in Waco, Texas. And I know a little bit about Waco, don't you? But you're going to know a little bit more about Waco, too. Okay? You're going to know a little bit more about it. All right? There you go. There's the gematria of Waco, Texas, 666. Now, don't think that's an accident. Because in that town of Waco, which we know where the Branch Davidians were that were murdered, Branch Davidians, this is also located in Waco, Texas. And you're going to learn a lot about this in the coming weeks. It's called the Grand Lodge of Texas. The Grand Lodge of Ancient, Free, and Accepted Masons. Now, who is the Grand Lodge of Texas? Well, the Grand Lodge is over all 849 lodges in Texas. It is the main headquarters of the Freemasons in the state of Texas. Did you all know that? But it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Now, Norway, they have, actually Norway's it's different in that they're Freemasons, the Norwegian Order of Freemasons in Oslo, Norway, where the Oslo Agreement was secretly made. Did you know that their Freemasons are hooked on to the Parliament? It's in the same building. Isn't that amazing? Keep those things in your mind. These are very important. They're going to be explained further, but I'm trying to lay some groundwork here. So please write down these numbers. Please write down these numbers. Let's write this down first. Norway is 96. Write these down, please. Freemason is 96. Abyl is 96. Remember, you need to write these down because I'm laying a groundwork. 1 hour is 96. 1 hour. Please write that down. Now, there was 323 reindeer. So let's go back a little ways. Let's look up the definition of 323. And it means exhibition or showing. It's from 322, and it means a pointing out, a public showing forth. a proclaiming, announcing, inaugurating of such as are elected to office, and it's from 322. And it means to exhibit, to indicate, appoint, show. And I want you to be thinking about the showdown, okay, that's fixing to take place, or that's taking place at this time. To lift up anything on high and exhibit it for all to behold. Okay? Now, Yahweh is going to show us some very miraculous things. And I want you to remember this. Think showdown. Think the August calendar. Remember, this took place in the month of August, this reindeer deal. Think Times Square. And remember the bus with the number 323 on the back. Y'all remember that? Notice the color green, the color of money. Okay, think about that. Think of the 888, the Go New York tours on the back written there. Believe some of this, a lot of this has been brought before. These numbers, Yahweh's showing a pattern to us in these numbers. Now, these reindeer were found on 8/26. It was on the Friday. And it means to shine forth, bright, clearly discerned. Clearly discerned is from the word og. And it means light of day, brightness, daylight, dawn. You know, for the righteous, the light of day, remember, it gets brighter and brighter. We're looking through a glass darkly, but we're going to see clearer and clearer as Yahweh explains this to us, okay? It's going to be very undeniable. I promise you, you will not have any doubt anymore who Yahweh's working with. Yahweh promises you that. It's also this number here in the Hebrew, and it means conjurers. I want you to think of the two races. Conjurers, an enchanter, an astrologer. From 825, conjurers, a necromancer, astrologer, practicing enchantment. Now, 323, let's get into this. Area code for Hollywood. Okay? Write down Hollywood, write down 323. And actually it was made their area code on 6/13/98. Okay? Think Freemasons. Hollywood Masonic Temple. Here's their phone number. 323-8268. Write that down, please. The number 8's important in this too. What about the Hollywood Masonic Temple? You ever heard of that place? Well, it's now called the El Capitan Entertainment Center. And it's where Walt Disney Company premieres all their movies. Okay? Walt Disney Company, Buena Vista Theaters, uses that as a promotional tool by creating themed environments to go along with movie premieres. The center is also rented out for industry parties, premieres, record releases, and product rollouts. And it's where Jimmy Kimmel Live is taped every day. Let me tell you a little bit about their past. Here's some people that, some of the elite, remember that word elite, because we're going to learn about that too, have been Masons at this temple, including these names. Cecil B. DeMille, remember the Ten Commandments movie? And Gene Autry, that's the one I want you to focus on right now. Gene Autry. Now, of course, the Masons moved now their lodge over a little ways, but here's the number of that lodge. This is going to be important. The number of that lodge is number 355. Please write that down. Lodge 355. And they give a little history here. It says, these days it is best known for playing host to the after film playhouses for Disney's kiddie films. You remember Walt Disney? That all of our parents used to think, oh, it's clean entertainment. You know, take your child to see Disney. It says the refurbished building owned by Disney is rented out for various events. It's also used as a themed environment to coincide with movie premieres. You know, movies like this one here, because now I want you to think about the date 8/26/16. And there's going to be a lot on that, so you're going to have to kind of just bear with me. 8, and then 26, 2 plus 6 is 8, and then 16 is like 8 times 2, right? So there was a lot of 8s in that, and I was struggling with that, trying to figure out, you know, about that number 8. Like, why was number 8 so prevalent in that story about these reindeer? The next day, as I was pondering this, Google puts up this image on their Google Doodle for the day. And it had this little boy here with a serpent over his head. And he was reading a book. And I thought, I wonder what that might mean. And I noticed it was at 1:35. It's kind of hard to see, but it was September 1st at 1:35. So I said, well, let me look into this. And it was about the Never-Ending Story movie. So I looked up 1:35 first, and it means a riddle, an enigma, to speak in riddles. Okay? Y'all know what a riddle is, right? A puzzling question. And it's also, this is the other, I believe this is Hebrew, and it means, 1:35 means Adon, which means Lord or Lords. Lord or Lords. Of course, you know, the Lords and the gods, you know, I guess they shortchange Yahweh, because Yahweh can figure out any riddle, can he? Yahweh knows all secrets, and he will reveal all the secrets. Now this number 88, because I thought it was interesting, I want you to notice this. Blitzen, one of the names of Santa's reindeer, since we're talking about reindeer, right? Blitzen was the lead reindeer. And Blitzen is number 88. We'll come back to Blitzen in a moment. But let me show you what 88 means. It means without ceasing, continual. Remember the never-ending story? Without ceasing, continual. It also means water skins, and it's from 178, which means necromancer, one who evokes the dead, you know, the dead lords and rabbis, ghost, spirit of a dead one, practice of necromancy, one that has a familiar spirit. Just bear with me. And I want you to remember, I showed you necromancy, you know, dealing with the dead is a sin, and it's 666 in Gematria, just like you have the word witchcraft, 666, okay? Yeah, here's the picture here. Remember the little boy reading the book, okay, with the serpent over his head. Well, I want to show you what he was reading. Here's the book he's reading right here. It's called The Never-Ending Story. Y'all see the Ouroboros here? Double snakes there on the Ouroboros. If you turn it sideways, you see the 88. Y'all see that? You see the 88, the never-ending story, unceasing. Remember this. Just write these down. It's going to be explained. Now remember, 355 was that lodge number, right? That was the lodge number. And it means to consume, to destroy, to annihilate. And I want you to write the word consumer down. You know, buyers, people that buy things. Write consumer in your notes. Consume, to conquer, to use up, destroy. And then in the Hebrew, 355 means doe. You know, like a deer? Deer? A hind doe? A doe or female deer? Now think about the 323 deer, okay? Think about that were found dead. Remember, we're going to solve the riddle, right? Well, Yahweh's already solved the riddle. It's going to be explained. Remember on the Hollywood Freemasons phone number, the last 4 digits? 8268. And it means a watering trough. It means make to drink, to furnish a potion to give to drink. It means to become tipsy, to satiate with a stimulating drink or influence, to be filled with drink, to be made drunk, be merry. Become drunk or drunken, be intoxicated, to make oneself drunk. And it's from 8354, which means drunkard, banquet, drinker, of drinking of the cup of God's wrath, of slaughter, of wicked deeds, to be drunk. Now that should remind you of a scripture in Revelation 17:2 that talks about the nations are drunk on the teachings that are coming forth from these conjurers, these witches. You know, it's interesting too, when I was young, we used to get what we called blitzed. You didn't know it's a euphemism for getting drunk. Getting blitzed. Well, what does blitz mean? Santa Claus's reindeer, remember Donner and Blitzen? Blitzen, it actually means lightning. Donner means thunder, Blitzen means lightning. And you remember Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer? Well, I wonder why his nose was red. Well, your nose knows why it gets red. 6 things your health tells you about your nose tells you about your health. Constantly having a red nose or rosacea is possible that you're either drunk or an alcoholic. Now remember, he was one of Santa's helpers. One of his reindeer, 666, Santa Claus. Yeah, he was a great guy, right? By the way, the other number on Santa is 546. And y'all, some of you remember a song they used to sing. That threatening song, you better watch out. You better not cry. You better watch out. I'm telling you why. Satan's coming to town. Here's the definition of blitzed. Means very much under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Blitzkrieg is what the Germans used. It's when they used lightning force to go in and destroy the enemy and annihilate them. It was called a blitzkrieg because it was like lightning. And that's why the Nazis had the lightning flashes, the thunderbolts, and their insignia. All right, I'm going to leave you with this because my time's up. We're going to continue on this, but I want to leave you with this, okay? I've got to get this in before I go. I didn't know time flies when the information is just, it's just so amazing. But I want to leave you with this because I want you to think of the mark of the beast. Do you remember in the mark of the beast where Pastor talks about the light of a lamp will no longer shine in you? Everybody remembers that? It's on page where he talks about the light of a lamp here. Liberty enlightening the world, talking about the city of New York. And he talks about, and he uses the King James verse in there. He explains light, a candle means lamp, so on and so forth. But I'm going to use the King James here for you. Revelation 18:23 says, the light of a candle shall no more shine at all you. The voice of the bridegroom, the bride shall not be heard no more at all in you. Talking about New York City. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth. And this is what we're going to be studying as well. The great men of the earth and the merchants. For by your sorceries were all nations deceived. Here's the gematria of that verse. Y'all see it? 10109. Also, 1225, like in Christmas. But what could 10109 mean? Well, I think it has something to do with this. New York, Times Square. Y'all see that? 10109. Now, could Yahweh get any more accurate than that? Well, he could. Because there's another, if you think that was an accident, I'm going to give you one more before I get off the stage. Revelation 16:19. In the great city, New York, divided into 3 parts. This is from the King James. And the cities of the nations fell, and the great Babylon came in remembrance before, it says God here, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Run that one through the gematria calculator. And it's 10179. What could this mean? Well, I'll show you what it means. And I'll lead you into the next sermon. It's right there, 10109 or 10179, New York. And particularly right here at J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan, what could that mean? What could all this mean? What's the riddle? Don't y'all think it's just amazing that our pastor pointed this out to us 40 years ago? He showed you New York. All roads lead to Rome and New York. The capital of the world, he called it, in the mark of the beast. You're going to be amazed. You're going to be shocked. You're going to be thrilled. You're going to be so excited when you see the rest of the story. Okay, but get ready, okay? Study that mark of the beast. I'm sorry I went over. May Yahweh bless you. And at this time, if you'd please stand, I'd like to turn it over to the great Kohan, Ilya Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may all be seated. Of course, the news today, we're going to start out and remember what the Peaceful Solution teaches about gossip. In the responsibility unit on page 86, it says it's a form of entertainment. And of course, it's also technically used as psychology to make everybody else look worse than you so you feel better about yourself. Well, in the news, I want to show this really quickly. What this is a crime index that shows they measure. If you want to move from one city to the next, they want to show you how deadly that city may be. Well, this is the crime index for Chicago. And Chicago, with all the murders and all the things we see on the news every week about Chicago, their crime index is 12. And that means, it's very small print, it says it's safer than 12% of the cities in the United States of America. So if you wanted to move to a safer city, you would find one with 3 major colleges, and you would move to one that has a 7, right? Welcome to Abilene, Texas. Yes, not Abelin, Abilene, Texas. So the crime rate you see in Chicago, when you're told to be careful about going into town, where you go and what you do, remember, the things you see about Chicago, statistics show Chicago is safer for you than going into Abilene right now into town. Be careful and be mindful about where you go. But in the news article, it also shows that there's other cities that are just as bad when you put crime per capita, such as Baltimore, New Orleans, and so forth. All of these things, some of them known as party towns, where you go to have fun. Well, the crime is running rampant there. And then in North Dakota this last week, of course, the Indians were given land many times, and as Pastor said in the Book of Yisrayl, if you research it, they give it to the Indians or the Native Americans, and they take it away when they need it back. Well, now they're taking away land, and of course, the Native Americans are fighting. And there's a lot of fighting going on up there over an oil pipeline that is coming through their territory. Then child refugees that are coming out of the Middle East, well, you don't have to look too hard to figure out who's behind it, because they say that the children are disappearing, becoming sex slaves, and child labor and other exploitations of children. Well, who could be behind that? Well, look to the 7 hills of Rome. And in the earthquake last Sabbath in Oklahoma, there's a news article on that to show it. It was felt in 7 states, a magnitude of 5.3, but of course they're blaming that due to the fracking of the earth and the disposal If you remember what we brought about fracking before, they actually inject water at high pressure, shatter the Earth's surface, create gaps for gas to travel through. They do that with water. And the water is very deadly. Remember, the water seeps into the wells. You can light the water coming up out of your faucet. You can literally ignite that. Well, they're taking this water. Once they're done, they push it back down into the earth and they cap it. And it used to be a solid foundation. Now it's fractured with a bunch of water and chemicals involved. And then we go to the Middle East, where Iran is kindly telling Turkey to respect Syria. Now that goes into more along in the news, but remember that Iran is telling Turkey to respect Syria. Remember, Pastor said last week that Russia is making you allies. And remember Japan. It wasn't but just a few months ago, Japan was talking to NATO. Well, now Japan is talking to Russia. And they're actually wanting to make agreements to go back on the World War II agreements, where Russia took 56 islands from Japan. Well, Russia is kindly wanting to sell them back, their own land. But even though that may sound odd, that's a huge step forward for what's going on in today's politics and society. Then North Korea, this last week, they detonated the largest nuclear explosion ever in their country, testing it, and they're saying they're preparing. In fact, the North Korean leader has said that he will turn America to ashes. And then in the last 8 years, the United States, now they say Obama, but remember, we've been selling weapons to the Middle East and to Saudi Arabia ever since Kissinger and Nixon back in the 70s. So it's not Obama, not President Obama. It's a system that he's the president of at this time. But 1.1 billion in arms sales to Saudi Arabia, and the only people they say they're bombing is Yemen. And then nearly 5 million children displaced worldwide. A third of the world's population is children. They're being displaced worldwide, and they're saying that this displacement, if you take a child away from his country, you send him from the Middle East into Europe, you train him in the European traditions. If you do that enough for a long period of time, you can start rooting out certain traditions of other people. That was done with the Native Americans also, this tradition that was, and they called them black suits back in the Native American days, and they were called Catholic priests also. But they wanted to teach them a new tradition. Also Singapore. Zika has showed up in China now, in Singapore. And then tempers flaring in Miami over this spraying of mosquitoes. Remember, it killed a lot of bees. But listen to the one lady. It says this plane flew over her house, dispersing this spray 11 times to the point her tongue started becoming numb. And the citizens down there, just like the ones in Puerto Rico, they're saying they don't want it. They don't want to see it. They don't want it around them. They would rather have mosquitoes than spray. And then we were able to send a YPN representative, correspondent, to the actual site where the 2.5 million bees were destroyed, killed, and you'll be able to see a live footage from that. And the lady that actually owns the farm is going to put her input into what needs to be done to save these bees. And listen to what she says very carefully, that without bees, what would occur in 4 years? In 4 years. And of course, that's been said before. And then veterans coming back from war. Well, what are they doing more than anyone else in American society? They're committing suicide. If they're not being killed over in the war, they're coming home, they're committing suicide. And what's being done about it? Well, nothing. That's what's being done about it. It's make yourself feel better. And then last night, this is very important. Last night, Russia and the United States actually have said they have reached an agreement for peace in Syria. Now, listen to the details. We edited this down quite a bit, but listen to the details, because they say no one really knows the details. No one really knows what anyone is getting, but they're going to implement this peace deal September the 12th. So pay close attention, and at this time, if we could please play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Well, in the news this week, Japan and Russia seem to be strengthening their ties. Also, North Korea is continuing to test and improve their nuclear program. And we'll have our continuing coverage with the ongoing wars and just who exactly is suffering the most. Now, all these stories and more, but first, let's look at a few problems right here in the United States. Well, they're breaking records this year all over the country, and now another one. But this milestone is not one to be envious of, Catan. The city of Chicago had its 500th homicide this Labor Day weekend and is on track for the deadliest year in over a decade. Now, the Windy City, however, is not alone, but part of a nationwide rise in murders.
Yeah. Well, just to get an idea of how violent this year has been for Chicago alone, let's go back to 2015. For the entire year, the city had recorded 480 homicides. So they are seeing a dramatic increase this year, and despite these extremely high numbers, Chicago still doesn't rank as the murder capital of the country if we look at homicides per capita. St. Louis, New Orleans, and Detroit all rank higher per 100,000 people than Chicago. Yeah.
But there are many more cities wrestling with record-breaking violent months this year. Cities like Baltimore, Newark, and Milwaukee are all experiencing consistently climbing murder rates. Now, yet mainstream media as well as political discussions, Catan, are failing really to include any of these shocking statistics in their talks.
Yes, we don't hear very much about those other cities. Well, shifting our view to the Great Plains now, where a standoff is taking place. A massive demonstration of 200 Native American tribes have gathered to fight the construction of an oil pipeline. At times, the clashes near Cannonball, North Dakota, have been rowdy and physical. Some demonstrators have been pepper sprayed, while others have damaged construction equipment used for working on the pipeline project. Well, North Dakota's government has called in the National Guard to put an end to it.
There are an estimated 5,000 Native Americans and environmentalists encamped on private and federal land. They say the pipeline was approved by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. However, proper permits were neglected to be acquired, nor were the tribes affected consulted in the route that this pipeline has chosen to take.
Interesting. Well, the lands are well known for their historical and cultural significance to the Lakota tribes. There are claims that the pipeline project has disturbed the sacred burial site and plans for it to run under the Missouri River, about a mile north of the Standing Rock Reservation. Well, there are fears by the tribes that the pipeline could leak, causing contamination, which could destroy the tribe's water supply.
In a statement to CBS News, a coalition supporting the project said it will be among the safest, most technologically advanced pipelines ever constructed. Now, however, the demonstrators in North Dakota don't believe what they hear. Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein also took part in protests on September 6th. The activist, known for taking part in demonstrations, spray painted on construction equipment the words, "I approve this message."
Well, Energy Transfer Partners, the company building the $3.7 million project, says the pipeline is already 50% finished. The entire length of the pipeline will stretch 1,100 miles across 4 states, beginning in the oil-rich Bacon fields of North Dakota and ending in Patoka, Illinois.
Well, moving now to the UK, where child refugees are in serious danger. Immigration authorities there have released some alarming figures showing 360 of the child migrants have vanished. And of those, 200 have been missing for over 2 years.
That's amazing. Many, including members of the parliament, consider their government as a failure to the youths. While the details about these particular children are unknown, disappearances take place for many different reasons. The children often become victims of human traffickers, and some may run away due to trauma or distress and also mistrust of authorities. And thousands have been deported back to their war-torn countries, so deportation adds to the fears of the children as well.
In the UK, as well as other countries, these innocent children seeking a safe place to exist are subject to human trafficking, sexual abuse, and neglect. While it's easy to see the problem, no solutions are being implemented at this time to save these children. So, Katan, we can expect to hear more about these same problems in the future.
Well, the earth continues to shake in place after place. We had recently reported on a major earthquake in Italy, but this next report brings us much closer to home. A 5.6 magnitude earthquake rattled central Oklahoma Saturday, September 3rd. The powerful quake's epicenter was near the city of Pawnee and tied a state record as it was felt across 7 states.
The quake jarred historic buildings in the area, causing bricks and debris to be strewn across sidewalks and yards. It also renewed ongoing concerns over the disposal of wastewater from oil and gas production. Now, the process has been linked to the recent outbreak of quakes in Oklahoma.
In 2015, Oklahoma experienced on average 2.5 earthquakes each day with a magnitude of 3.0 or higher. For the entire year, a total of 907 earthquakes of that magnitude actually shook the state compared to just 2 in 2008. So you see a huge jump in just 7 years.
Definitely can make a connection there.
Yes, that's right.
Well, the oil and gas production process known as hydraulic fracturing or fracking produces wastewater. The disposal of wastewater has now been linked to the increase in earthquakes, prompting the state of Oklahoma to initiate the fastest and largest shutdown of wastewater wells in history. 37 are scheduled to be closed.
Well, seismologist Susan Huff of the National Geological Survey told CBS News, if we stop all the activity tomorrow, it's not like the earthquakes would stop tomorrow. The earthquakes caused by wastewater injection wells are generally not as severe as natural ones, but some worry that this could change if states where fracking is rapidly increasing don't take note.
Susan Hoff is in hopes that the regulatory steps will help lower the overall rate of these quakes, but has also expressed concern, stating there's the potential for more earthquakes, there's a potential for bigger earthquakes than what we've seen.
Interesting. Well, things are also being shaken up overseas. Larry McGee has a report today on the latest that's taking place in and around the Great River Euphrates. Larry, what do you have for us?
Iran is lending its voice to the ongoing turmoil which has beset Damascus, stating that Turkey should respect the sovereignty of the ancient Persian nation. In a recent press conference, the Iranian foreign minister also called for all nations to avoid adopting a double standard with respect to Syria, citing Turkey's support for certain militia groups inside the country. Ankara is reported to have dispatched soldiers and tanks into Syria in a bid to expel ISIS mercenaries from the town of Jarablus, but ultimately they ended up turning their weapons on U.S.-backed Kurdish fighters who were in the same area supposedly fighting the same enemy. Ankara's actions are starting to appear to some as a land grab, with the Turkish-backed Free Syrian Army claiming to have taken control of a stretch of land extending from Jarablus to Azaz. Confusion is the order of the day as alliances overlap and shift among the heads of the nations. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is looking to ignite a new era of relations between Japan and Russia. In a speech delivered at a forum in the Russian city of Vladivostok, the Japanese head called on Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the abnormal situation between the two countries, which has lasted for 70 years. Mr. Abe also suggested that the two nations arrange an annual meeting at which to settle any differences. The Russian response was that Moscow is ready to take decisive steps to resolve its territorial dispute with Tokyo over the Kuril Islands. Tension between the two nations dates back to the latter part of World War II, where Moscow is recorded to have seized the islands. The annexation is said to have displaced 17,000 Japanese. In their place now are many Russians and Ukrainians, so turning the islands back over today would not be an easy task. The southern islands, however, are said to be a different proposition, and according to reports, Japan would very much like to repossess those islands if possible. Japan's ace in the hole is that it has cash, and Russia is very much in need of it due to the downturn in oil sales it has been experiencing related to the Saudis increasing their production with the specific intent of damaging Russian sales. Russia has been on the outs in terms of buying and selling in the global economy due to its activities in Ukraine. Moscow is believed to be striving to offset that with various economic agreements with the Japanese nation as well. The storm over Asia is growing more intense after North Korea confirmed its fifth nuclear test fire this week. Pyongyang says that the test was meant to address U.S. bullying, and it broadcast that North Korea is now capable of mounting nuclear warheads on ballistic missiles. The show of force is said to have triggered a 5.3 earthquake, which is actually the largest of the 4 past quakes associated with the North Korean test fires. Pyongyang says it will not dismantle its nuclear program due to the ongoing hostility it receives from South Korea and the U.S., who has recently announced the deployment of an American missile defense system on the peninsula. The head of South Korea is referring to the test as an act of self-destruction that will only serve to further isolate its northern neighbor. Japan is reportedly calling the move absolutely unacceptable, and it intends to launch an official protest against the activities of the North Korean nation, whose nuclear weapons program global analysts are calling accelerated. For IPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Good time, Jeff. Back to you.
Well, North Korea is certainly getting the attention of a lot of other nations with these tests.
That's right.
Well, the United States government has offered Saudi Arabia $115 billion in military arms and training. Now, that latest information provided by the Center for International Policy, a U.S.-based think tank. This recent arms offer is the largest ever made during the 71-year-long U.S.-Saudi alliance. Now, the weaponry includes tanks, helicopters, air-to-ground missiles, missile defense ships, and warships.
That's right. Some rights groups said that certain U.S. congressmen have condemned the sale of armaments to Saudi Arabia, especially after a spike in the number of casualties in Yemen.
Nearly 50 million children worldwide who have been forcibly displaced from their homes. This, according to the United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF. Now, more than half of those 50 million have been displaced because of violence and conflicts. UNICEF warns that many of the children leaving their homes are vulnerable to abuse and called for a collective effort to bring an end to the plight of children in danger, particularly those who have been taken refuge.
Well, children in Syria, Yemen, and Afghanistan are being forced to go through difficult times for which they have nothing to do with. Conflicts and violence have put millions of children in danger, and those, quote-unquote, lucky enough to escape death have faced displacement. Justin Forsyth said that of the 50 million children, 28 million have fled conflict and violence. That's near doubling in the last decade of children that are actually displaced.
Well, Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer, told Press TV that with the result of the forced migration, you're going to have children without parents. They're going to be angry, increasingly violent, prone to criminality, kidnapped, thrown into sex slavery, and rampant gang activity that is inevitably the result of young men who don't have a family. UNICEF said that children make up nearly a third of the world's population.
Of all the refugees in 2015, about 45% came from Syria and Afghanistan, two of the countries struggling with a year of conflicts that stem from the destabilizing policies from the United States and its allies. And Mr. Bennett said that the United States and its allies should immediately halt all warmongering and reorganize their alliances to not include Saudi Arabia.
He continued, Saudi Arabia is the cancer that keeps metastasizing, and it does it with a violent Wahhabi jihadism that has this global conquest agenda.
Interesting. Well, suicides by veterans occur on average 20 times a day. One veteran, Frank Lefnesky, after 2 tours in Iraq and trying to drink himself past the demons that darkened his mind, and after a second member of his old platoon committed suicide, well, he finally got help. With his therapist, he can finally talk about his PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder instead of being haunted by it.
Lefneski said in an interview with CBS News, "I was immobilized. It's like being frozen, just watching time pass. It's crazy." Now, Staff Sergeant Lefneski hit his own rock bottom and contemplated taking his own life. He said, as he tried to hold back tears, "I had a great person tell me once, they're killing us over there and they're still killing us over here. And that guy told me, don't let it happen. Don't give them that satisfaction."
He continued, "I used to be jokey. I used to be goofy. I was Frank from North Scranton, and I know I won't be that again." Well, another soldier, Jenny Pakanowski, an Army combat medic, described the battle she fought once she got back home. She said, "For a long time after I got back, I isolated myself in a cabin and drank all the time. Then at one point, I decided I was going to try to do everything possible," she said, "everything possible to feel better. But if nothing worked, I was going to kill myself." She concluded, "God, this is harder to talk about than bombs." Wars, whether amongst nations or within one's own mind, bring long-term suffering to those directly and indirectly involved. Suffering is inevitable for this world in its current state without someone with some plan to turn it all around. Well, Yisrael Hawkins is unfolding the details for this plan to stop all wars and suffering, and it's called The Peaceful Solution. To find out more about this plan and the great teacher and work that's bringing it to life, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free copies of the Prophetic Word magazine and the monthly newsletter.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. You can also visit our website at www.ypnnews.com. For any emails, you can email at info@yahweh.com. For calls coming from outside the United States, please call the number on your screen. And once again, don't forget the Yisrael Says program by going to www.yisraelsays.com to learn about the greatest Bible study tool on the market today.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, the only man with the true plan, Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Hammerman.
Thank you for watching.
At this time, if everyone would please stand, we'd like to introduce the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kahan Yisrael, Abel Hawkins.
Praise Yahweh! We got a crowd. It must be raining outside. Let's go. Wow. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. I hope you're absorbing all of this. I hope you're, I really hope you're studying it, because you can't get this just listening to it. And there's so much here that we're trying to give everyone all at once. And I know these numbers, unless you study them and get them in your mind, they won't mean too much for too long. So if you could study them along with your prophecies, maybe on preparation day. Praise Yahweh. Preparation day. You know, by preparation day, it started yesterday with my normal routine. I was delivering men to work, and I got to thinking, you know, when I had 4 men crawling into my car, and I got to thinking, you know, I did this 50-something years ago, or 60. I was working on an oil field crew, oil construction pipeline work, and I was hauling 3 men with me to work. Every day I'd go and pick them up and take them to the shop. We'd get our tools, and then we'd take a truck from there then to work. And I can't remember the year, but it had to be 50-something years ago, and I'm still carrying on that job, you know, but in the House of Yahweh. But that's on preparation day. I normally get up early, I lay my books out and get ready to put sermons together for, you know, the Sabbath. And then if no phone calls, that's what I get done before I take the men to work or start taking the men to work. I can normally get back within an hour or so, and then I go and get the men of the evening and take them home. Now, yesterday I was really busy, right up till sunset or after, when I start taking confessions, you know, for Sabbath. And Eob, I got angry with him, but I didn't tell him that. But he went and got my men and took them home for me, doing me a service. But I'm always disappointed when I can't get my job done, you know. Anyway, I feel the same way about the work of Yahweh, and that is part of the work of Yahweh. The work of Yahweh takes priority over everything. Praise Yahweh. That's the reason you were called here. You were called here to give a job, to learn to see if you're capable, Mr. Cain or Miss Cain, of changing your sarcastic attitudes, of humbling yourself to people you think that you look down to talk to like they were dogs. Mr. Cain and Miss Cain, why are you so angry? Why are you so sarcastic, Cain? You know, downcast, you know, that's what that word means. It means a lot of cute things that Satan really likes to see in your face. It's not the face of Yahweh she's seeing when she sees this. It's Satan's face. Her and her sons, the gods. You're playing a great part when you put this face on and you tell the people, my work is done. I'm not doing this anymore. You think that's pleasing to Yahweh? I know these things. You know, I'm the witness that Yahweh put here to witness whether I would have you in the house or not. I would hate for you to show sarcasm to Yahweh. I'd hate for you to show it to Yoshiyah. You better start changing it, because I won't allow you to be there, and I know Yahweh won't allow you to be there. Change it and be like Yoshiyah. Put his face on and say, I'm here to do the work. I'm still here to do the work. I start early in the morning doing the work, and I do it until it's done. I don't do it till 5 o'clock. I was working last night till after dark, and Eob called me and said, I know you're busy, so I went ahead and took the men home for you. And I said, well, I was going to get them, you know, just a little bit later. But I'm glad he did. Praise Yahweh. Anyway, the news that you saw, that's Satan's world. And we had to cut it short. We'll play some of it next week, but I said, well, I got too much to cover, and we broke down, and I need to cover this. You need to hear it. You really need to get this lesson today. We didn't get to play some of the health, the bad health that's going on that Yeshua mentioned in Matthew 24:7. There's going to be the greatest epidemics ever in the history of mankind. Now, Now that is shown in in chapter 7, but verse 7, but verse 21 and 22 shows it's going to be the worst ever. Now, if you're keeping up on this, I know Yahweh has sheltered you somewhat, but He still lets you feel pain. If you don't feel any pain, maybe I'll pray that you do, to let you know what this world is going through. I know men and women who have put an end to their life because they couldn't stand the pain. Now, this is going on all over the world. I don't know if you got the news where 21 veterans are killing themselves every day. Why are they doing this? If you don't know, you need to wake up and maybe get to past sermons, and on next preparation day, start reading and studying this and get yourself ready to pay attention Sabbath day. That's what preparation days are for. U.S. sees alarming jump in rate of newborn syphilis. Now, this is our babies we're talking about. A very tender spot with me. The health organizations are finally waking up to see the need, see the mess actually, that the Roman Catholic Church and 4,200 religions have got this world into. I know you saw New York part of it. I wrote about this in Mark of the Beast, as the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins just brought out, and the Times Square and the ritzy parts of New York. I came up just in time to see that you got that. If you remember the boats, when this war takes place, ships out in the ocean that's carrying cargo are going to be weeping and wailing, and on the phone, if they can use the phone at that time, saying, what am I going to do with all my cargo? What am I going to do with all of this? And the merchant's saying, who is going to buy our merchandise now? Mine's filled with Christmas. December 12th, they said, or something like that, was some kind of date that was given. You remember that? Well, anyway, the Revelations talks about it. Revelations is right on the money. It doesn't vary. We got to the place last week where Yahweh said, and I said I fell in love with this book of Yahweh, because Yahweh said this is, He said, search out and read. Not one of these are going to be forsaken. Talking about the prophecies. And I said, these prophecies are alive, And Yahweh is making sure that nothing changes that. If you think of letting Satan have this book, and how Yahweh had to guard that, but He let him have it. He let them take it away from the people. All the writings, it wasn't put together at that time. The apostles' writings and Yachanan's writings of Revelation wasn't with it, but it came to be with it. And when the king authorized it to be written without the names, of course, both books were put together. All of these writings of the apostles and the prophets was put together as one. It had to be. That was the part of the House of Yahweh, of the Book of Yahweh, that explains the House of Yahweh and our work that we had to do. I had to study that as a child. I had to be taught by my mother and dad in order to teach to you, in order to branch out, I'd like to repeat that 100 times and have you write it like my teacher, when she was wanting me to say 0 and I was saying O, and she said, write this 100 times, Bill, on the blackboard. I said, well, when I put it here, you give me a 0 for it. You give me a O. We were joking, of course, with each other. I had a wonderful teacher, by the way, in school. I can't ever remember having a bad teacher. I can't remember, some of them got harsh with me, but they were great teachers. They were wonderful teachers. I remember Miss Peary. Her name was Peary. I remember meeting her in the grocery store one time when I went with my mother, and I was quite young. She was a fourth grade teacher, and I saw her in the grocery store, and I ran up and hugged her and introduced her to Mother. I loved the woman. I loved her teaching. She was great. She was kind. She was thoughtful. She helped me immensely to want to get my spelling and to write zeros instead of O's. I said, that is so much nonsense. I don't see any need for it. Zero, spell it out, and they'll give you a wrong. They'll give you an O for it in your grade. Anyway, back to this. Love your teachers. Have respect for them. They're never wrong. They are right, and the child is wrong, always. And they're trying to help you. That's your counselors. That's your supervisors. They're your teachers. And do what they say. Even if you think it's wrong, you do. If you don't do what they say, you're going to burn in hell because you're being rebellious. If you do what they say and it's wrong, that you won't be held guilty. Unless it's sin you're talking about. I'm not talking about sin. Of course, you should buck up against sin and call me immediately. Well, anyway, the World Health Organization, all the health organizations, they're seeing that the religions now have made a foolish mistake. You are a part of the House of Yahweh that Yahweh shows in Zechariah 5 and verse 9, where he says, you and I together, we're working together. I can't make it without you. I couldn't be sending out literature like this and doing radio and television broadcasts like this without you being a member of this house and doing your job. No way. Together we make it. Together we would fall. If everybody did, refuse to do their work, it would stop. The House of Yahweh would stop. If you noticed enough on the news, and in the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins information, that I said, just cut it off with this right here, because they can't absorb any more than this. But if you notice what he brought out, and you put it together, you could see that Satan has a great plan for trying to destroy Yahweh's house. This is her whole hope right now. Destroy the house of Yahweh. Reindeers, do you see all that? Do you see where all this came from? The numbers, it brings it back and shows you where it came from. It's showing the plan that they're putting together or have put together to get rid of you, to keep you from doing Yahweh's work. My hope and your hope rest in the fact that Yoshiyah, Matthew 16:18, said, the gates of hell is not going to prevail this time. It won't prevail over the house of Yahweh ever again. If Satan wiped us out, we would not be able to bring the message to the people, to bring the gathering here to Yahweh. But we would not be able to raise the dead either. We're the ones that Yahweh said, you will not all die. You're going to be the ones that raise the dead. Praise Yahweh. Surely you remember those sermons. Not one of these is going to fail. Not one. They're all very much alive, and Yahweh is guarding them and making sure they get to the right ears. No matter the little strings in there that makes you hear, that gets to your eyes and makes you see. It's all there. That gets into your brain and makes it work. Satan has tried one last hope of killing it with marijuana. I'm not going to bring that any more than that right there, but you better be praying that Yahweh forgave you for that and heals your brain. The rate of newborns with syphilis jumped 38%. This is back in 1914. Right now, it's jumped to 100%. Some more, some less, but every one of them's got it. I'll show you how I know that in just a little bit. The disease which is transmitted from infected mothers to their babies. Jumping. What caused that is the Roman Catholic Church that sits on 7 hills prophesied in Genesis 49, verses 10, to hold the scepter, the ruling rod, whose brothers praise him in his evil. Now, this is all given to you in Genesis 49, telling you what the world is going to be right now. The same group sitting on the 7 hills as Rome, but still holding the scepter, as Malachi Martin plainly brought out in his interviews. Not anyone caught it, I don't think, but myself, in the world anyway. Some of those trained in the Catholic Church knew it, of course. But this Yada is holding the scepter today. Yoshiyah is only high priest over the house of Yahweh. All judgment is given to him over the house of Yahweh. Blessed are those, he said, that keep Yahweh's commandments. I'm going to give them life. Yes, he said that in that. Put the 2 scriptures together in Yochanan and Revelations, and you will see that Yahweh gave Yoshiyah the power to give life. He gives that power to us to give life. He showed me that at the beginning. He showed me that. Of course, I knew that we were going to raise the dead, but he showed me that I was going to have power to raise the dead. Yoshiyah said he is putting together a house that the gates of hell will not prevail against, and they're the ones that's going to be given the power to raise the dead. Yes. Mother-to-child transmission is death. Not only death, it's murder. They're murdering these children because they're not teaching. They're holding back the words, the teachings that would stop this whole thing from going on. How do I know that? Because Yirmiah said it. If they had stood in my counsel and caused my people to hear my words, they would have turned them from the evil of their ways. But they won't do it, and the Pope says, don't teach them morals. This takes away from their rights, the rights to murder babies. The syphilis can be found in bones. Way, way back, clear to Italy and Rome, in babies' bones. I told you that syphilis, we thought we had it wiped out when I was working in the State Board of Health laboratories as a young man, making big money. The 2 witnesses. In Revelations 11, 1 through 4, we see they're the lamps, the 2 witnesses. That's 2 houses of Yahweh. When I say witness, you are with me. You're with me 100%, or you're with Satan and you're against me, one of the 2. But you're included. When Yahweh says witness, he wasn't just speaking of a person. How do I know that? The 2 witnesses was carrying the house of Yahweh to establish it. The house of Yahweh. The house of Yahweh is you people right here. You're my witnesses. I'm Yahweh's witness. You're my witnesses. Okay, the two witnesses. Revelations 11, 1 through 4, it plainly says they are the two olive trees. And you can't put that on somebody else. Yahweh says they are. Yoshiyah says, I'm the vine. You are the branches, he said. That should establish that in your mind right there. He didn't tell a lie. Yahweh didn't tell a lie. Yoshiyah didn't tell a lie when he told Yochanan to write this. These two witnesses are the two olive trees, the two lampstands that give light in a certain time period. Give light. Your laws are a light to my feet, says the psalm. Your laws are a light to my feet. They are the two that brings the light for your feet, for your brains, for your whole body to be here. Now that should be established in your mind with those scriptures right there. The house of Yahweh, not just the two witnesses, but the house of Yahweh, is prophesied to be the difference from the 4,200 religions. They are prophesied to show the difference, to actually show the difference. I think we better read that instead of trusting to your memory. Turn over to Zechariah, because this is where we left off last Sabbath, in Zechariah here. If you look at chapter 5 of Zechariah, found on 719, and get this in your mind and believe it. Not one of these are going to fail. And if you get it in your mind, what Yahweh says here, and you depend on it, These are the two olive trees. There's no guesswork about it. When you see it anywhere in the Holy Scripture, you're going to know that Yahweh meant what he said when he told Yoshiyah to tell Yochanan to write this and write the things. The sentence of this great whore here is going to disappear pretty quickly now. You're running out of time, Miss Cain. Mr. Cain, you're running out of time. Got it? Then I lifted up my eyes and I looked, and two women. This is the two houses of Yahweh that was shown earlier in this chapter and in the last part of chapter 4. And 10 and 11, taking the house of Yahweh to a Babylonish land to establish it. And that's exactly what took place. One up there and one down here. The western light here, the eastern there. The western light will never go out, Scripture said. Did you know in the original, I know I brought this out before, but in the when they were put in the mobile tent, they never allowed the western light to go out. And there was miracles they showed that it was actually worked to keep the western light burning. Well, that's us. We are the western lamp. We are the two lamps. Well, here now, in chapter 5, in verse 9, he says he lifted up his eyes and he saw these two women, the last two eras of the house of Yahweh. That's what they are. Sent with commandment. You see that back up to verse 5. It says, the Malach, the messenger, who was speaking with me, came forward and said to me, lift up your eyes now and understand that which is sent by commandment. You're sitting on it right here in the house. You're it. I was telling Zechariah at that time, Yahweh let him hear me telling him, yes. And Zechariah actually looked and saw the house of Yahweh. Yahweh showed it to him. You remember Eliah when he said he could see all these armies, but no one else could see them? So he asked Yahweh, allow Elisha to see what I'm seeing. And he showed him Quran. It says there are powerful beings. They're not doing the work. This is done by the Son of Man only. I'll make man in my image, and I'll give him authority to do this. That's how I know that. Men and women, sons and daughters. That's said later. Sons and daughters of Yahweh. So he's speaking, when he speaks of the whole house of Yahweh, he's speaking of just that. But the Quran said there's powerful beings that's closer to me than my jugular vein. Now, it means house of Yahweh, brethren. He not only says this is a place of protection. You have that protection right here. Not one of these is going to fail unless you fail. You run trying to save your life, you're going to fail. It's going to get pretty shaky from here on. They're showing us what they're going to do. Yahweh is showing us what they're going to do, what they're going to attempt to do. If you remember, they attempted it before, but it didn't come to pass, did it? You're still doing the work of Yahweh, right? Praise Yahweh. 2 women sent by commandment. The verse 5 shows you. Let me show you, he said. And understand, please understand this. That which is sent by commandment. I'm not here preaching because that's what I chose to do. I'm here preaching because Yahweh chose that I would do this. and prophesied before I was born that I would do this. And he would give it to me to do. That was all shown to you. You could go back and get these sermons anytime if you don't understand or don't remember them, but you need to get them. You're running out of time. Sent by commandment. The Spirit, now you know the Spirit is the law of Yahweh, Yochanan 6:63. The flesh is worthless without this Spirit of Yahweh's laws. This Spirit, not one of these are going to fail now. This Spirit that comes from reading, studying to show yourself approved, reading it for yourself, then practicing that, this changes your whole body, your character, your mind, your heart. Yahweh says it does. Malachi shows you that. Chapter 4, Malachi. This Spirit of Yahweh came to overshadow them, you, me, the houses of Yahweh that they're carrying here. It shows them to be carrying it through the air. There was a lot of hard work went into this, but we came out on eagle's wings. That is, in flying colors, we have come out. Same thing, means flying colors. They were covered with the covering of saints, and they exalted, magnified, and exalted the ephah. The ephah, that's the Spirit of Yahweh in the 2 houses here. The standard of perfection sent by Yahweh's laws, separating the way of the world. That's what we're doing right now when we preach every time, and the shows, the news, everything. We're showing what the world is and what the house of Yahweh is bringing forth. Separating the way of the world from the way of Yahweh. In chapter 5, verses 5 and 6, read that again. Then the Malach, the messenger, Yahweh says, Yoshiyah says, I'll send my messenger to tell you this. Well, before Yahweh let the prophets see the work of Yahweh ahead of themselves. Daniel says, I saw 2 others in the future teaching. He saw that. And then he asked one of them, when is the end going to be? And I keep telling our elders that's working with these numbers, I think Yahweh gave us more than just that time and beginning of times there. I mean, divided times. I think he gave us the answer here, and I think if you just dig hard enough, we're going to see it. Well, whether we do or not, be prepared and you won't miss out. But it's going to be very quickly. This is not going to linger on. That's what the seventh messenger tells you. Time no longer. It's running out. This is what the great Kohan, David Heimerman Hawkins, just brought out a few weeks ago. You didn't believe it? That's your problem. The fearful and the unbelieving will have their part in the lake of fire. I can tell you right now, you better believe it. I brought out prophecies, and somebody said back and told you when the nuclear wars is going to start in and around the great river Euphrates. It came and went, everybody thought, or many knew. The news media led people to believe that it came and went and no nuclear war started. But it did start, and we have 2 letters proving it. There was a strike on a nuclear building right on the shore of the great river Euphrates that very day that we prophesied, that Yahweh showed us in Scripture would be. The next one was a general had a load of bombs headed that way, and he stopped it, and the headlines read, "General stops the nuclear war single-handedly." On that very day, Revelation says Yahweh held back the nuclear war. It did start, but he held it back for us, the house of Yahweh. We are his work. Not one of these is going to fail. That was a big test for many, but you came through. Don't let this little test coming now where the 4/5 of the earth's population is going to be wiped out, don't let that alter you. Yahweh is in full control. But this is coming. They're planning right now, and they're showing it. These reindeers was just one show of this, what they're going to do. Waco, did you see? Yeah, I know you saw that. Waco, and what it meant, and where it came from, and why they wiped that man and that group out, and all the others out. Shot a woman while she's holding her baby. Yes, this is how ruthless this bunch is. You don't have to fear them. Fear not, Yoshiyah said, somebody who could destroy your body. Fear Yahweh. Reverence Yahweh. He can destroy your body or let it be destroyed, and you'll never live again. Yahweh can resurrect you if someone else kills you and you're righteous in your death, just as Stephen. We're going to resurrect Stephen, who exposed the Catholic Church and then told it's going to be taken beyond Babylon. No one understood that but us. Okay, sent by commandment now, that's verse 5. And I asked, what is it? And he answered, this is the ephah, the standard of perfection, the 2 houses of Yahweh, sent by Yahweh's laws, prophesied in his laws and prophecies. Then he added, this is honor, knowledge, understanding throughout the whole earth. This is a prophecy that the 2 houses of Yahweh is going to take throughout the whole earth. Now, as weak as we are, Yahweh, when he prophesied this, there was no way we could reach the earth. I told Jacob, I told him when we was on XCG, this was a shortwave station, and I said, and he said, we're fulfilling that prophecy. I said, no, we're not fulfilling that prophecy. You know, we're not reaching 10%. I doubt if we're reaching 1% of the people. I said, something bigger than this is going to have to take place. But I do remember us talking about that, and we were on XCG and then a station down at Eastland, and we got more out of the station at Eastland than we did on XCG. but there was some listeners. It came some from Germany that was actually converted. You never know where your bread's going to float to when you cast it out on the ocean. But when Jacob went, he and his families went to Israel. Joe with travel agency, if you want to check this out. Some people accuse me of lying, Joe with travel agency told me that she was the one that booked him and his whole group that he took with him to Israel, which was my brother Tex and his family, and a couple more members of the local group at Romney, but anyway, he went to Germany because he wanted to stop and see the people that were converted in Germany from our XCG radio station that we had that reached to Germany. Anyway, I don't know where those people are now. They may be here. I don't know. But anyway, that's how the work of Yahweh is going, these two. But now it's going throughout the whole earth. Every place that owns a computer, which is everybody's land, even Norway's land, they have this coming to them. And we're getting contacts from people all around the world too. That was told to me yesterday. The gematria for House of Yahweh. I don't know. This may have been brought out before. But the gematria for the House of Yahweh is number 1603. If you notice, there's a 613 there in that number. You see that? 1603. 1603 means to accomplish entirely. It means to fulfill. It comes from 1537 and 4137. The 1537, the gematria of it, let's see the original point where motion or action proceeds. Abundantly above heavenly. So this shows that the house of Yahweh in the gematria is coming straight from Yahweh out of heaven, abundantly above heavenly. From above heavenly. The number 4137, the gematria, shows from 4134 to make replete. To make replete, the definition of replete means abundantly supplied, to furnish, satisfy, finish. To finish the work. Oh boy, isn't that wonderful? Number gematria of 4134, from 4130 to cover over, complete, full, to cover over, complete, full. The Holy Spirit overshadowed them. That's the way Yahweh described it here. Holy Spirit would overshadow the house of Yahweh, if you'll let it. Number 4130, to fill, furnish, supply, fully accomplish. So we're going to accomplish this work. Not one of these is going to fail. That's what the house of Yahweh means. That's what you mean. That's what you mean to heaven, too. We have jobs, by the way, from all age groups. I was so surprised when Yisrayl I kind of know this girl. 12 years old, I think. Don't get mad at me if I got that age wrong. But she was the editor of the commercial. Did you see the commercial of Invitation to the Feast by Shiloh? Was that played? It wasn't played. Oh boy, I'm in trouble. Should have got that in. Shiloh is my daughter, but biologically through the Matthews. Praise Yahweh. I think she's 9 years old. She's the one that did the talking, and Yisrayl was the editor of that commercial. Remember that next week when you see this, okay? It's like a professional did it. It's like professionals did this job. Now this is in the House of Yahweh. We got jobs for you. This is what we're doing in this generation. What is described in the House of Yahweh, the gematria of the House of Yahweh, and that was given to me by a great deaconess. I think it was given in a confession. And I said, hey, I got to have that for today. The House of Yahweh, Matthew 16:18, the gates of hell will not prevail against it this time. Zechariah 6, verse 11, we got to read this before it's over. Now remember, Yoshiyah says, I will build my house, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Now right after that, he was killed. His disciples were all wiped out. Yochanan was the last to be alive and copied the book of Revelations in 96. That was brought out in today, the number 96. And you see how significant that is. Well, in Yeshua was dead. His disciples were all dead. Most of them died in Rome. They had the last part of the Book of Yahweh with them, and it was confiscated. Now you think of a miracle. I'll go for those kind of miracles. If you believe this, and you're a fool if you don't. You know, this stuff is proven. So, you know, the prophecies, they don't lie. Every one of them is coming to pass, proving the Book of Yahweh true and correct. But here now, Yahweh says, in the last days, the two women are taking this, the two houses of Yahweh is taking this, and they're going to spread this perfection. That's exactly what this shows right here, the gematria of the Book of Yahweh. Now, that was given to me today, this morning. You think Yahweh's not leading this? It's showing exactly what I was going to speak on. I said, that'll fit right into what I'm going to speak on today. These two witnesses, two houses of Yahweh, is taking this perfection fully furnished by Yahweh. Everything we need is being fully furnished to reach the entire world. Taking it to a Babylonish land, not yet established, where children are sending out commercials. Oh, y'all are grown up now, aren't you? Well, you got some learning to do, but you're doing great. I'm talking to some daughters over here. Then I said to the messenger, that's me, that's the house of Yahweh. Speaking, that's what he saw, two houses of Yahweh. And he said to the messenger who was speaking with me, where are they, the two witnesses, the two lamps, the two olive branches? The two branches, that's over in chapter 4 now, the branches to chapter 4:12. Where are they going? Where are they going with the standard of perfection? This is the standard of perfection. The gematria plainly says it's fully furnished for you. The Book of Yahweh. And I said, it's alive. This is alive. This is wonderful. You couldn't find anything more wonderful than this right here. I've grown to love it, so I caress it every time I pass it up. The two witnesses, where are they going with it? And he said to me, to build the house of Yahweh according to the standard of perfection. That's what this is right here. Standard of perfection according to the Book of Yahweh. Not one of these will fail. According to the Book of Yahweh. Sent by Yahweh's laws in a Babylonish land which does not yet exist. That was the land of America. That's the only one that didn't exist. Columbus, who died of syphilis, was one to register as the discoverer of the land. Alexander the Great, who sent him, died of syphilis too. No, it wasn't Alexander the Great, but it's his comrades that sent Columbus to try to get... They wasn't trying to do anything but get ownership of this land. But Yahweh saw to it that we would be able in this Babylonish land. You couldn't do it in any other place. If I'd have been born in Russia or Germany, I wouldn't have been able to. You couldn't do it. You understand, you couldn't do it today. We couldn't go there and establish a house of Yahweh today and do the work of Yahweh. The only place that we could do it is right here. This land, the Babylonish land, not yet established. Now that's Yahweh pulling all the strings to bring this about, to make it possible. Bring back the Book of Yahweh. Reestablish his house in a Babylonish land where it could reach the entire world. Without a superpower guiding this thing, without a super mind, the great wisdom, think of the great wisdom that Yahweh has to put all of this in a book where we can see it and read it, and then bring it to pass right in front of our eyes. It would have to be a pretty stupid mind to stand up and say, well, I just don't believe that. Well, Yoshiyah said a fool. It's better to keep your mouth shut and nobody know it than to open your mouth and prove it. Keep that in mind the next time, okay? And it will be established at that time when the two witnesses are called out to do their work as the established place, as the established place, the habitation of Yahweh. Deuteronomy says, seek the habitation of Yahweh. Yoshiyah called it the kingdom of Yahweh. Seek the kingdom of Yahweh first, and all these things are going to be added to you. Seek the kingdom of Yahweh and his righteousness. Deuteronomy said, seek the habitation. That means how? Seek the house of Yahweh, and there learn to rejoice in Yahweh, and he will cause you to ride upon the high places. Read along with that Isaiah 58. Habitation of Yahweh, the house of Yahweh. I didn't get near as far as I wanted to this today, but we got far enough. Yeah, Yahweh is guiding this every move that we make. And it all turned out just the way he wanted it to. If you'll hang strong, you may have to keep your mouth shut, but hang strong. You know, I used to tell the workers when I'd pick them up in the morning, you know, that is 50-something years ago now, when I hauled 3 men to work, and we'd go out to the oil fields, and I'd tell the men on the way, look, the boss was kind of disappointed because we didn't get any more work done than we did yesterday. And I said, you know, when you're talking, when you go to your place to work and you stand around doing talking, I said, I noticed a couple of you were cooking, you know, and you could put the stuff on to cook, and you could still go about doing your work. But a couple of you stood there for over an hour and a half, and I said, you know, you were actually stealing from the boss. Now, I said, that's between you and him, but today, let's make it different. Let's make up for what we didn't do yesterday. Well, we got a lot of work done. In fact, when I quit that place, I was telling the crew I'm going to be quitting on a certain time, and one of them asked me, he said he's fixing to get him a car, and he said, what do they pay for you picking us up every morning and taking us to work? And I said, they don't pay me anything. And the guy said, well, I was going to take your place, but I'm not going to haul them free. I said, I did, and I took joy in hauling you, and I'm glad I met you. Well, that's the attitude about work that I've had. In college, when I was in college, I was so pleased to have a job cleaning the cafeteria and the bathrooms. I was also pleased to work in the press room. And I put in quite a few hours learning printing, which came in handy here on T&P Lane. Kohan Yahuda and I, we worked late hours. There's no way that we could have got the prophetic word out if we'd have went there and worked 8 hours. But we would work late of the night, and we'd lay down and we'd sleep for a while, and then, in fact, I had a trailer out behind, and I would go out there and sleep for a while, and then I'd come back and start to work again. And because the press room that now is the full turned over to the press room, it was the House of Yahweh at that time, with the one wing of it being a dark room where I developed the pictures and made the films, and then I'd take them out to David, and he would glue in little letters on the plates. I'd burn the plate for him and hand it to him, and he would glue in missing letters, because when you're printing in that fashion, we're way above that now, but this is an old-fashioned way, but it was brand new at that time, but it's old-fashioned now. But today, they don't even make plates, I don't think. I think they talk to this computer and tell him what it wants them to do or what they want it to do. It's not quite that advanced, but anyway, it's much faster and completer. But David and I would work, sometimes we'd work all night, and but we would work till the job was done. And I wasn't, I was never in drudgery against the work. In fact, I took joy in doing it. I was joyful all the time that we were doing it, and so was David Berner. And we did this for years. And we would get the things printed, and then we would call for a crew to come and help us put it together, because our collator was, we laid them out on the table, and we all walked around the table getting one leaf at a time and putting the book together as we went around. Then we had the staple machine, which we'd use to staple it. Then we had a big old cutter. We had a folder, I believe, didn't we? Or did we fold them by hand? Had a folder, I think. And we would put these things together, and then I would run the cutter, and then they were passed on, I guess, to the ones to the mail room, right? You was part of that, wasn't you? Was you there at that time? Or no? Well, there's some of us. I remember Desi Demetro. She came in with her boys, two of her boys, Boaz and one other one, I think. And she told me who she was. She'd been on the mailing list a long time. And she told me who she was. And I said, Benaiah, was that you? And I gave them to and told you to put them to work. Benalia was there, and I said, she introduced me, and I talked to her 3 minutes, her and her sons, and I said, Benalia, take these people in there and put them to work. If they don't want to work, show them the road. And they all laughed at me, but and I laughed too. But that was the way I was, and I'm going to be that way in Yahweh's kingdom. So get used to me. We're going to do the work. We'll have time for pleasure, but we're going to do the work, and we're going to take joy in that work throughout all eternity. You're going to be there with me, okay? Now, Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the services back to the next leader. I love you!